Today on Eye on Northwest Politics, on a roll, a commanding victory in the November election for Vancouver's mayor takes her to a third term. I talk with Ann McInerney-Ogle about the future of that thriving city, tackling homelessness and the big projects on the horizon. And TriMet in a time of change.
We're going to have to cut service to the public.
I sit down with the head of TriMet to talk about his vision for public transportation in the Portland Metro amid service cuts and a $300 million budget gap. Eye on Northwest Politics starts now. Thanks for joining us. This is Eye on Northwest Politics. I'm Ken Boddy. Let's get right to your top political headlines. All 200 California National Guard troops stationed in Oregon are headed home. They started demobilizing this week, as did half of the 200 Oregon National Guard members standing by. President Trump wanted to deploy the troops to protect the ICE facility in South Portland, but a federal judge blocked those deployments. There are less than 2 weeks left, and Portland Mayor Keith Wilson's self-imposed deadline to end unsheltered homelessness. Wilson campaigned on that primary goal to end unsheltered homelessness by December 1st. In late October, the city brought the number of shelter beds total available to nearly 1,100. That is short of the 1,500 that Wilson announced in January as part of his homeless blueprint. And a group challenging Oregon's new transportation funding law has collected more than half the signatures it needs to put a measure on next year's ballot. The new law includes a gas tax hike and higher vehicle registration fees to prevent layoffs at the Oregon Department of Transportation and to fund road projects. The group No Tax Oregon needs 78,000 signatures by the end of December. They've already collected more than 42,000. The tax increases are set to begin in January, but if successful, the referendum would pause that and let voters decide in November of next year. From Max Light Rail to a fleet of more than 650 buses to the Lyft paratransit service, TriMet is the region's largest public transit agency. TriMet had more than 5.8 million passengers in October of this year alone, and more than 65 million in the last fiscal year that ended in June. That averages out to more than 208,000 fares every weekday. The transit system has more than 3,500 employees at a nearly $2 billion budget. However, TriMet also has a $300 million budget gap and is making hard choices when it comes to service. TriMet General Manager Sam DeSue is here to talk about that and his vision for the future of the transit agency. Appointed to the GM job in 2021, he previously served as Chief Operating Officer. He's also a military veteran, having served a decade in the U.S. Army. Sam DeSue, welcome to Eye on Northwest Politics.
Ken, thanks for having me.
Well, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the hard choices that you have to make, I want to talk about your career. You've also worked in Kansas City, you worked in Washington State. Why public transportation as a career?
Well, growing up in Florida, we relied on public transportation, my family and I, to get us to opportunity. And it was something that I felt in my heart. I've always had a servant heart, and I wanted to give back to our public. And it was something that I chose to do once I ended my military career in Seattle, is joining public transportation. And from that time, I've started as a bus operator and rose through the ranks all the way up to general manager of TriMet.
I mentioned the $300 million budget gap that you're dealing with right now at the agency. You just announced a $17 million spending reduction that eliminates 68 positions, 26 layoffs. And then starting November 30th, you've got some service cuts as well. Fewer buses at night, buses will arrive less often on some routes. We got to look at some of the cuts going into effect soon. We've got a full list of those both on your website and ours. So why these cuts and why now?
Ken, I want to start off. We have world-class employees that work at TriMet. And I'm absolutely fortunate and blessed to be the leader of the organization during this time, and grateful for the personnel that's there to provide 1.3 million trips on a weekly basis to this region here. As you stated, we have a budget deficit that we are faced with, and we can't wait until 2030 when the reserves that we have run completely out. It would put us in a dire straight position. So we are taking immediate steps to solve for our budget deficit. And part of solving for the budget deficit is reducing our general administrations. And part of that, which are heartfelt decisions from me as a leader of the organization, was to lay people off.
Is Max Light Rail affected? We've talked about, some of the reductions in the bus routes, but is Max affected?
No, so these next 2 months or 3 months that's coming, we're doing small service frequency adjustments and efficiency alignments. And what we're going to do is we're going to look there in November at the frequency adjustments, and then in March of next year we'll make frequency adjustments to our bus lines. But at this moment, Mike's, there's nothing that's on the horizon. However, we are talking about what our service reductions and efficiencies are going to be for the fall of 2026. And we have reached out to the public. We've met with some of the public during our October months. We're going to go back to the public and reach back to them to get their feedback and survey information to advise us on what cuts will work during this time. But again, I want to go back to the key point here is that we are going to move forward with efficiencies first, and then we will then look at service cuts moving forward.
Do you see any fare increases?
I do. I see a fare increase in a couple of years from now, somewhere in the 2029 year of having a fare increase.
You still have to maintain your fleet, buy new buses, trains, equipment as needed. How are you balancing the needs of the present with what you anticipate in the future?
Yeah, and that's a great question on there. So if you think about our system is 40 years old, and everything is expiring, especially on our blue line. So we've got to replace trains. If you notice that we have 26 new Type 1 trains that are coming. And if you think about the cost that's there, $6 million to $8 million, depending on what you put on the train, that's a big cost that we have to pay. And part of that is that we're dependent on help from the federal government and our local partners to be able to upgrade the system that's needed. Also, we have to upgrade trike and our overhead catenary and switches that's out there on the system. But again, part of the budget deficit that's there is that the cost to do business has increased. And that's what we're dealing with right now is that we've seen an inflation cost of 53% over the last 5 years with electricity and fuel costs and material costs. So we've got to find that money. So if you think about it, Ken, just our households that we deal with, when you have an increase in costs and then your revenues remains the same or either reduce due to the ridership decreases that we've had over COVID, there's a gap there. And what we're solving for right now is trying to bring our costs down and bring our revenue up as we deal with this budget deficit.
You talk about loss of some ridership during the COVID era. How much did that hurt passenger ridership? And have you seen any recovery since COVID of those passenger numbers?
Yes, we had a 40 to 50% decrease in ridership during COVID. But what I can say is since then, we have seen increases year over year as we have moved forward up until today.
What did TriMet get from the transportation package that passed the legislature?
So we're grateful for the governor to actually move this package forward and give us a 0.1% increase that's there. But again, we have not received any of that. That takes place, that starts January 1st moving forward.
Now, you said from what, 0.1% to 2%?
So currently we're at a 0.1% now, and it's moved now an additional 0.1% to now a 0.2%.
What does that mean in terms of dollars?
So that means about $85 million. Each 0.1% increase is somewhere between $45 and $48 million.
When people gather at transit stations or bus stops, there's always the possibility of bad things happening when people gather. We have seen some incidents at or near TriMet property over the past couple of years. What moves are you making or have you made in terms of security? Great question.
This is something that's very close and near and dear to my heart. I want people to be safe, and I truly believe that our highest priority at TriMet is safety. Safety is first. So we've tripled our budget in security. We have about 500 people that have brought presence to the system that's out there to keep people safe and being available. We've also taken on some projects in our security area. We have a 24/7 security center now that's open. We've put blue light telephones in so that people can pick up the phone and call us in at our transit stations.
So you have made moves, and I imagine that those moves will continue to be made over the course of the future.
Absolutely.
Sam DeSue, thank you very much for being here on Eye on Northwest Politics.
Thanks, Ken.
Next, a vision for Vancouver. Vancouver Mayor Ann McInerney-Ogle joins me to talk about her election win and the challenges of leading a growing city. We'll be right back.